Happy victory Sunday night, Dolphins fans. Brandon Liguori and Matthew Morin coming to you live about an hour and a half after the Miami Dolphins wrapped up their 2021-22 season with a 33-24 victory over the New England Patriots, securing their two-game season sweep of New England for the first time since 2000. Matt, if you're a Dolphins fan, this has to be, a kind of a disappointing season because the way this team opened the season 1-7, right? I mean, we get that, but the way this team was able to fight back, win 7 consecutive games, and really, at one point they were in the final wildcard slot going into that Week 17 matchup last Sunday against Tennessee. But at the end of the day, year 3 under Brian Flores and Chris Greer, this is the 3rd consecutive season now with no playoffs. You can talk about how the game went today, but really this is going to be, more of like a look into the future type podcast. Really what went right today for the Dolphins that maybe gives you hope because you now enter year 4 this upcoming fall. And, Matthew, this is going to be a very critical year for Brian Flores. And, as of right now, he should be safe. But again, it's the NFL. You never know. But first, how's everything going, buddy?
Everything's going good. Dolphins had a valiant effort today. They got it done in a game that was probably a lot of people would say merely for dignity, but they were able to get a W and get one last W in the column. So that was good. But as far as what you were discussing, as far as future and how much of a kind of a letdown this season was, Miami came into this year really looking forward to Tua's year 2 and really like springboarding him into a bigger role offensively, right? And those things just didn't happen. So that offensive line didn't do him any favors. That running game didn't do him any favors. And he probably didn't do himself any favors. So you got to look at this team, and there's some things to be encouraged about, but there's also some things that you should probably be more transparent about if you're a Dolphins fan, right? You should probably get more comfortable admitting that Tua needs certain things to be potentially a Super Bowl caliber quarterback or a playoff caliber quarterback. He's not like these guys that can create with lesser situations and do more. Right. You see guys like Deshaun in Houston. I'm sorry, I'm making that comparison, but it's true. He can make something out of nothing a lot more and often than Tua can. And, we got to be more honest about those things. So what do you prefer going forward as a fan? Do you want to see him with that perfect system, or do you want to get someone else in here that can work with what we already have? So
I think, of course. I think, one great point, Matt, to, touch up on what you said, what really impressed me the most towards the end of the season, I think Dolphins, Duke Johnson should be on this roster. Duke Johnson pretty much played for a contract towards the end of the season and pretty much proved to this Miami Dolphins coaching staff that he belongs on this roster for the foreseeable future. And it's a wonderful story for Duke Johnson, a former Miami Hurricane, grew up around the city of Miami. But really, at the end of the day, the Dolphins are probably going to have to look in the draft for a potential running back. Remember, they passed up on Najee Harris. They passed up on a guy like Jonathan Taylor, like we've seen dominating the league this current season. And even on the defensive side of the ball, if you were watching the Baltimore Ravens and Pittsburgh Steelers match before the Dolphins kicked off today, the dominance of pass rusher T.J. Watt, I mean, I put out a tweet earlier today just to show Dolphins fans that the Dolphins literally had a chance to grab T.J. Watt, but 8 picks prior, they instead selected Charles Harris. And, that relationship obviously did not work out well. So there's been some misses, but there's definitely been some hits in recent drafts. Like, for example, this current draft, Javon Holland, Jalen Phillips, and, Jalen Waddle, who broke the rookie the rookie receptions record, passing and one of the best receivers really in the National Football League, Anquan Bolden. I mean, if you looked at Jalen Waddle's rookie season, Matt, what really impressed you the most about the former Alabama product that really excites you for Waddle's future?
Well, just what you see on film, he can really break down any type of defense, whatever package they throw at him. He's got something for everything, and that's what you look for in a complete receiver, right? And I think just his consistency, and he was able to break that record in 16 games. He missed a week, so he got it done in less time. So I think with Waddle, you're only looking at how high the ceiling is. There is no ceiling. I don't think that kid is in his rookie year and he breaks the rookie reception record and gets 1,000 yards pretty much with ease almost. And he wasn't even used as a downfield guy. He was really used as a short to medium yardage type of receiver. Imagine when Miami can actually block for more than, I think they average a second in pocket time, which is abysmal. Imagine if they could increase that and give him more time to get open downfield. Just imagine what type of numbers he'd put up then. So really a lot to look forward to with him for sure.
And really, Matt, just the wideout group as a whole, what does Albert Wilson's future look like? You know, what does his future look like? What does Devontae Parker's future look like? I mean, remember, this was a Miami Dolphins wideout group. And, hey, don't forget, Will Fuller seems like it was pretty much a waste of a signing, played only, I believe, 2 games this season before a finger injury and, you know, pretty much stuff behind closed doors that I'm sure they just publicly don't tell us. It was obviously a disastrous situation for Will Fuller. But really, when you break down this Dolphins wideout unit, I mean, really, what is the future for Albert Wilson, Devontae Parker? Do they bring these guys back, or really, you know, do they maybe free up money to try to gain a greater amount of salary cap? I mean, how do you see these specific dominoes falling?
Well, if I'm in Chris Greer's shoes, and if I'm basically the constructor of this roster, I look at what the guy I just drafted at 6 overall just did in his rookie year, and I compare it to Devontae Parker's best season, Albert Wilson's best season, and Will Fuller's best season, and he probably stacks up against them. And he did it in a year where things were still kind of weird with COVID, and Jalen Waddle came in and produced. So I look at Devontae Parker and Albert Wilson as guys that, granted, yes, they've had their injury struggles and things like that. And Will Fuller, I'm sure there was things going on behind the scenes, like you said, but they've got to be better. So I would look at that and be like, well, I might as well just rebuild the entire core, because I hit on one already. And wide receivers, that seems, in recent memory, it always seems to produce. That position always seems to have at least 2 guys that really take off in the NFL every year, every class. So, I mean, I don't know. They should look at maybe rebuilding that entire core. Devontae Parker, it seems like, I hate to take a shot at the guy, but it seems like his hamstring is hurt every 2 weeks. Something's always going on with Devontae Parker, and that might not be his fault. It may or may not be his fault, but there's got to be some sort of consistency from that position group, and Waddle's the only one that's shown it. So Chris Greer has to look at it from an objective standpoint for sure.
Well, you know, local 10 sports journalist Will Manto, who does a wonderful job, always, you know, enjoy reading his work, watching him on TV. He put out I guess you can say, a debate as to whether, you know, the Dolphins do you believe the Dolphins should bring back Brian Flores? And I had commented back saying, you know, absolutely. I think the way this team, you know, did not quit after starting the season 1-7, like we had mentioned in the beginning of the show, the way this team was able to stack 7 consecutive wins. But here's the con now side, Matt. Flores' 4th season, if he is held, it's going to be as critical as ever. I mean, now if we're walking into this 2022 season next year and Flores doesn't win, doesn't make the playoffs, doesn't secure the AFC East, him and Chris Greer are probably in a lot of trouble. Do you agree with me? I mean, are you on my viewpoint as to that? I mean, what do you see? Because remember, 3 years, no playoffs.
I'm with you on it for the most part. I do think Flores ends up coming back. I would also say I hope that's a fluid situation. I hope they're not dead set on it because of a few reasons about Flores. But that next year, if he does come back, is very vital, obviously, to his entire tenure and the potential of it. You know, sure, I'll take the minimal improvement year after year, you know, winning season twice now. You know, the first year he started off rough, but he inherited a very below average roster, a very poor roster, I might say. So you kind of give him that, you give him an excuse for the first year, but those next 2 years, he had winning records, won 10 games last year, didn't make the playoffs. He wins 9 games this year, didn't make the playoffs. Now you got to put it together. Put it together in your 4th year, make the playoffs. And if they don't, man, you got to start looking at a new regime because, you know, they've hit on some guys. Now, what do you do with them?
Speaking of, you know, hitting on, what about guys who are set to hit the free agent market? We got Emmanuel Ogbah, Mike Gesicki. I mean, these are just notable names. Ogbah being on the defensive side of the ball, Mike Gesicki being on the offensive side. I mean, these are big names, Matt, that the Dolphins, with the salary cap that they have the money to re-sign these guys. We know in recent memory the Dolphins do not like giving away big contracts. Stephen Ross is not a Jerry Jones type guy where he gives a fat amount of money to his high, star caliber like players. So when you look at Agba's future, when you look at Gesicki's future, where do you see them? Do you see them being Miami Dolphins in 2022? Do you see them maybe joining another AFC squad? I mean, where do you see these two players falling?
Well, I would love to see them back with the Dolphins, but I will say this about Stephen Ross, and this might be another conversation for a whole other day, but he's very intrigued to spend money on free agents, but he's never, like you said, he's never spent the money like that on his guys that have already produced for him. So he's willing to go out and break the checkbook for a guy that hasn't put on a uniform yet, but for a guy that's actually produced for him already over a certain amount of years, he's a little reluctant to spend. I think Emmanuel Ogbah deserves money. I think Mike Gesicki earns a payday. Whether they get that or not, I don't know, because this front office is so volatile on big decisions. You look at how they treated Tua, throughout the Deshaun rumors. They say one thing in public, and then you kind of can't not believe the source that says, hey, they're talking to this team. So it's a little weird in that front office. I will definitely say that. So I hope they come back. We do have the money to do it, and hopefully they see that and realize that when it comes time to make that decision.
And Matt, regarding Tua Tagovailoa's play this year, the kid's been in the league now 2 years, hasn't played 2 full seasons yet because, as we know, Ryan Fitzpatrick starting week 1 of the 2020 season. But if you're able to just, give us a viewpoint as to how you think he played this year. Remember, he was placed on IR, so there was a point where he wasn't able to play in 3 games, came back in that Jacksonville-London game. Obviously, we know the result of that. The Dolphins falling 23-20. I remember that game had dropped the record to 1-5, and that's when you pretty much felt like the 2021 season was pretty much going down the ultimate bottom train. But if you're able to assess Tua Tagovailoa's play, does he belong with this team? I mean, is this team just a few playmakers away, a few stout, good offensive linemen? Because in my opinion, the Dolphins, they have to go out during the free agent market, and they need to find proven guys, proven tackles, whether they're a left guard, a left tackle, a right guard, or a right tackle. They have to find guys, signed veteran guys, that are not near retirement, but guys that can lead a locker room. Because remember, Miami's offensive line, Robert Hunt, Austin Jackson, I mean, these are guys that are very, very young. They're not like a Green Bay Packers offensive line. They're not like a Dallas Cowboys offensive line, and they're certainly not as experienced and well-positioned as an Indianapolis Colts offensive line. Not even going to mention that they did lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars today. But I don't want to get too much into that, Matt. But, just talk to me a little bit about Tua and where you see his future going now entering year 3. Do you expect him to remain a Miami Dolphin?
For now, I expect him to be a Dolphin. There's a few reasons why. As far as his play, I think considering the circumstances, it goes down against Buffalo, fractures his ribs. That's a tough injury to play through and come back from. So, it's not totally on him, I'd say. There were a lot of moments this year where Tua was encouraging, and then there were a lot of moments that just left you scratching your head. So my thing with Tua is it's always been there's always something with him. There's always one play that'll just make you not believe. So he is definitely being treated in a bad way by this organization by the fact that they have not built a line and they have not given him a running game. And I think he's shown that he needs those 2 things at least a medium level. They've got to be at least decent for him to be a good NFL quarterback. If they are the way they are now, I think he's lucky that he even threw more touchdowns than picks, because that line and that running game just is not good enough, plain and simple. In the NFL, for Tua, for any quarterback, some quarterbacks can make it work more than Tua has, but it's got to be better than what it is. It's horrible. So I'm not mincing words here when it comes to those 2 position groups, and I'm not going to unless it gets better. Miami should go out in free agency and sign the biggest, baddest dudes to be on that offensive line, because the guys that they have now, the way they work, it's in sync just doesn't produce on the field, and it's not good enough for Tua. Clearly, whenever they get down in a game, they cannot come back. They can't pass protect for more than a second, and it just doesn't work. It's not a formula that wins titles in the NFL. Mm-hmm. You've got to be able to run the ball, you've got to be able to protect the quarterback, and you've got to be able to play good defense. We can do one of those things at a high level. Miami has a Super Bowl defense, in my opinion. They can do it. This team can win in the playoffs if they had an offense that had any semblance of consistency. But the fact is that they don't. And because of that offensive line and that lack of running game, until you get those two things, Miami's not going to go anywhere. And they're definitely not making the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So that's got to be the main focus. You pass on Najee Harris, you pass on Jonathan Taylor, and I get it. Miles Gaskin, probably a nice guy, but I don't think he's the guy that's going to be in your backfield to win a title. I just don't think he is. So you've got to go get someone that's physically imposing. Najee would have been perfect. Okay, said and done. Got to go get someone else. Have to.
Speaking of Miami Speaking of Miami Super Bowl-like defense, how about Xavier Howard? A pitch hits today off Matt Jones. I mean, we've seen plays like this over and over. Xavier Howard being the ball hawk that he is, pressuring the best receiver on the opposing side, ball hawking quarterbacks, picking off footballs. I mean, everyone talks about Trayvon Diggs over in Dallas, but I think a lot of people are forgetting Xavier Howard is a legitimate top 2 cornerback in the National Football League when fully healthy and when his mindset is 100% on playing football the right way.
Right. Xavier, they basically – that play was awesome because they showed one package and then employed another once the snap went off. And Mac Jones was reading one thing through the out route, and Xavier just jumped in front of it. It was a great play. I believe it was Nick Needham in the slot. He faked. He sat in coverage, and he let the guy basically come out of his route thinking he made Mac believe that he blew coverage. So Xavier jumps in front, takes it back to the house. It was a great play. So that's just another thing another play added on to Xavier's resume that we all know him to be as the best ball hawking corner in the NFL, probably. So Xavier's a guy that you love to have on your defense, that you love to have in your secondary, and he just made another play that adds to that. It was a great play.
Matt, I think, what's so – the reason why I say this Miami Dolphins season was kind of frustrating because, again, you opened the season 1-0. And the reason why they opened the season 1-0 was because Xavier Howard making a play late in the football game. But then you lose – not only do you lose 7 consecutive games, Matt, the teams that they lost during this 7-game losing streak, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Atlanta Falcons, the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, we're here recording our show at 9:09 p.m. After the team finished 9-8. But I feel like this team could have been 11-6, even 12-5, and really securing the AFC East title. I know that sounds really, really crazy, but if you take away some of those losses that Brian Flores' Dolphins had suffered during their 7-game stint, this is a whole different team. I mean, they're playing next Saturday, Sunday, or Monday on Wild Card Weekend.
Right. I mean, it's something that happens in sports or, in general. But with the Dolphins, what I've seen growing up with this team is they find a way to win games that they're not supposed to win. And the ones that they're supposed to win, it's just a complete, disaster. So who thought we were going to beat the Ravens on Thursday night? Nobody. I don't think either of us did.
I was one of the
Actually, I will say, I picked us to win that game. I'm going to go out there and put it out there.
I said we were going to win that Thursday night game. And I told everyone that we were going to – I said, don't be surprised if we win that game by 10 or more. And everybody was like, Brandon, really?
That's exactly it. You'll predict that, but then the game against Jacksonville, that's a way more inferior team, a lesser team than the Baltimore Ravens, top to bottom. We think, we're going to lose that one. That's just so typical Dolphins. So that's something that just encapsulates the entire season. Those 3 games, Atlanta, Indianapolis, and Jacksonville, those games that if you drop and you take care of business and you actually just do what you're supposed to do, you're in the playoffs right now, man. You're in the playoffs. So can't look back on it too much. I'm sure Brian Flores is not going to dwell on it. He doesn't come off like that type of coach. Mm-hmm. But I think he probably will lose a little bit of sleep about those 3.
So, Matt, before we close tonight's special show, I want you to provide our fans, what you will be doing during the offseason, the extended coverage that we're going to be providing for PhinManiacs, because this show is definitely not going to die, even though the Dolphins season is now dead. But I want you to, just basically touch on what you're going to be working on, just some different projects that you're going to be, forming during this 2022 offseason headed into next fall.
Well, definitely we're going to be looking forward to the next Dolphins campaign, 2022, 23. I'd love to get with Hassam and cover more college football, even though that just ended also. We could definitely preview some more things around that. And maybe we could get into the college basketball scene. It's starting to pick up. March is coming soon. Maybe we could do a little bit of that.
We got to do a little fun March PhinManiacs March Madness bracket style game.
We could do that. We could do some bracketology and get
Florida Gulf Coast going to the Elite Eight or no?
I don't know about that. 8 Miami Hurricanes just winning Cameron Indoor.
How about that? Shocking Duke.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
Duke.
Larry is saving his job. I love it.
They closed as I think 12 or 13-point underdogs, and that was a very impressive win.
Not supposed to win, but they got it done.
That win they'll definitely crack the top 25 now. But that was a very impressive win, especially going into Duke, Cameron Indoor. It's always one of the toughest college basketball environments. The students are as crazy as they are there. I mean, I would
love to go to a building and a game in that building for sure, because it's electric in there. And if you see the aerial shots before games, it's very, very tucked in. So that sound is probably just deafening. So great environment in sports just in general. So big win for the U in basketball.
So Matt, give me a quick prediction. Tomorrow night, Georgia, Alabama, Stetson Bennett, Bryce Young, Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, a rematch of the SEC championship game where the Alabama Crimson Tide pretty much showed why they are college football's dynasty team. Give me who do you think is going to walk away out of Indianapolis tomorrow night? The Colts, hey, their season's dead, but there still is a game to be played in Indianapolis tomorrow night. How do you see this falling out? And I believe Alabama is a 2.5-point underdog. Why you're giving Nick Saban an underdog for tomorrow night, I have no idea.
Vegas must know something that we don't, because I'm done doubting that man. As much as I don't like him, he gets it done. That is the greatest coach in college football history. So my prediction, I think that game is going to be a lot closer than the SEC title game. I think Georgia will learn from their mistakes in that game. I think they'll come out a lot more fired up. But definitely, I think it's going to come down to the quarterback matchup, and I have to go with Bryce Young. Stetson Bennett.
The Heisman Trophy winner. The Heisman Trophy winner.
He's worked hard. He's earned his spot. Stetson Bennett, honest guy. But, man, Bryce Young is just a better quarterback. And I think if it comes down to it, he's going to make the plays. Stetson Bennett, he's a little bit too shaky in the pocket for my taste. So I think Alabama gets it done. I'm going to go 33-27 Bama.
Matt, isn't it really crazy to think that once upon a time, Nick Saban was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins? I mean, you tell folks that, and they kind of look at you like you have three heads, because they're like, wait, Nick. I mean, the way he changed college football since 2007. I mean, Alabama wouldn't be Alabama without Mr. Nicholas Saban, and that's really how I really just feel about it.
Well, I mean, it seems like a lifetime ago, right? And he was in that press conference and he said, I will not be the coach at Alabama. And then, I think less than a month later, he was gone.
Yeah.
So he was in Tuscaloosa wearing the red plaid and, wearing the Bear Bryant hat. So that was frustrating. But, Nick Saban's done an amazing job. He's really changed the entire landscape of college football and made it what it is today. Whether you like it or not, he's the greatest coach. And he could add to his collection of rings. He's got 7 tomorrow. Monday night, he can make it 8, and that's pretty unbelievable. That's
pretty damn impressive. That's, again, you talk about the greatest coaches in sports: Bear Bryant, Nick Saban, Mike Krzyzewski, Bill Belichick. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Matt, I want to thank you for this. This was a really good show that you and I were able to form during the Miami Dolphins regular season, boiling down, talking about Dolphins football. We argued about it for years inside of the classroom, and now we finally took it to an actual podcast, man. So we definitely got to keep this going. We got to create really good content during the off season, and I'm definitely looking forward to chatting with you more.
Likewise, man. This was the inaugural season of this podcast, and it's only going to continue. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, folks, thank you very much for tuning in to a special edition of the PhinManiacs wrap up. The Miami Dolphins closing the 2021-22 season on a positive note. defeating the New England Patriots 33-24. You see our Twitter handles down below. Do not be shy to follow us. Do not be shy to criticize us. Do not be shy to compliment us. Matthew Morin, Brandon Liguori, and as always, fins up, and we'll catch you as soon as possible. Have a good night, folks.